Hey, welcome to this podcast where the truth is released to inspire you to find your voice, bring out the gold within you, and help you reach your full potential to roar out loud in the world around you. I'm your host, Mary Street, and I'm here to take you on a weekly journey of hope, inspiration, and empowerment. This podcast is where we believe in turning up the volume on life's practical tips, impart insightful wisdom, as well as share life stories of triumph, resilience, and passion. In each episode, we'll be diving deep into relevant topics in today's world, as well as into the incredible lives and stories of extraordinary everyday individuals like you and me who have been set free from the fears, lies, and have overcome great adversity and found their voice to release their roar. So whether you're tuning in during your morning drive, working out at the gym, getting ready for school, or cozying up with that good cup of coffee, get ready to amplify your life and ignite your courage. This is Roar Out Loud. Hey, everybody. Super excited to have you here with me today on this podcast. Now, this is a special podcast because it is Valentine weekend, and I have got with me a special guest, the most special guest next to Jesus, my husband, Peter. Hey, I'm super excited for you to do this with me.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's for my first time on the podcast.
That's right.
Which is cool. And it happens to be Valentine's week, and we have some exciting things to talk to you guys about.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk to you about our relationship journey, which was very interesting, honestly. I've got a book that's coming out soon that there's a chapter in there that I just wrote about this. So it's fresh in my heart and on my mind. However, it never goes away. It always actually still stays fresh in me. And it's super exciting. Our journey was exciting, I would say. It really was.
Journey.
It was
a journey, and it was exciting.
It was a journey. Can you tell them, where did we meet?
We met in Tanzania, in Africa.
Yep. So I came to Tanzania as a single missionary. Now, on this podcast, many of you guys know that we were in missions, and for a very long time. I was personally over 16 years, but Peter, you were raised there from the time you were 5 years old in Tanzania.
I grew up there. My parents still live there. That's home for me.
But you were born in Scotland.
Born in Scotland. I was living there and working there when Mary came to Tanzania.
When I came to Tanzania. Yeah, so the Lord brought me to Tanzania as a single missionary. I had a heart for Jesus. When I was younger, I had such a call for missions on my life. Like I would weep at the commercials. Some of you guys have heard me say this that are tuning into other podcasts. And with that, I just knew that I was called especially to Africa. So at a young age of 27 years old, I went over to Africa. I did not have on my grid that I would meet somebody all the way in Africa. Now, I had been dealing with disappointments in my own life because I had my own agenda, really. Now, I was like, I'm going to be married by the time I'm 21. I'm going to have my first baby by the time I'm 25. And we're going to go to the mission field by the time I'm 27. So out of all three of those things, only one happened. And I was on the mission field by the time I was 27. And I went single because I believe that as a single person, you spread your wings and you fly. You go about the Father's business, no matter what is happening in your life. And so that's what I did. I spread my wings and flew. And I had no grid that we would actually meet. And when we did meet, we met at his parents' house on it was one of those nights of worship.
Yeah, worship night. And
you remember you came in from a backpack trip with a friend.
Yep, I'd been on a trip, backpacking trip down to, where to go? To Zimbabwe and Malawi, and had just got in that night. We'd been gone for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
That's the first time I met you.
And that was the first time we met. So his parents would, as longstanding missionaries there, a lot of the missionaries in the area, in the city that we lived in Moshi, Tanzania, they would come to their house. They would sometimes have worship nights. And so myself and other teammates, we went there that night, and in walks this rugged
African man.
African Malapa flip-flops, as we call them, torn shorts, and a t-shirt, and kind of just ruddy looking. And there he was. And my heart did not flit or flutter. It was just like, whoa, who is this person? And where did he come from? And so I didn't know at the time you were actually Mama and Baba, as we call them, Stephen and Street's son. But there you were. And then what ended up happening?
We would meet every time there was a party at someone's house or
Or
at
another
my
worship
parents'
night?
house or another worship night, and we'd end up sitting and talking together for hours, just deep conversations without even thinking anything about it. That's just what
Yeah.
ended up happening every
Or I
time
would
we would
be on
meet.
the street walking
Mhm.
in the morning times, doing my exercise, and here he would come on his motorcycle, his picky dirt bike. We call it picky in Swahili. He'd come on his dirt bike, and we would stop on the side of the road, and we'd end up talking for hours and hours, wouldn't we?
Yeah, when I was on my way to work or wherever, if I was going to town, I'd pass her on the way because we only lived like 4 houses away from each other, and so Mary would walk every day, and I'd end up driving past, and we'd stop, I'd roll the window down, and we'd talk for hours.
We've talked for hours, and we often just talked about Jesus. We talked about life. We talked about relationships.
Mhm.
Often would give him dating advice. At the time, I wasn't even interested.
No,
And neither one of us were,
no,
actually. We just were good friends.
yeah,
And that's how it really all began.
yeah.
And then what happened from there?
Um, the I guess the key moment for me was we had a friend from high school was staying. He came to propose to his
Girlfriend
at the time, who was staying. I think she was staying at my parents' house. So that particular night, I was hanging out with him, and Mary and her housemate came around to talk to my dad about buying a vehicle because my dad was into cars and knew a lot of what to do. So they came around, and it just so happened that I had just got a new dirt bike, and I had just got my Toyota Land Cruiser, 1972 Land Cruiser.
He likes his toys.
That I had built, rebuilt, just got it back from the shop. And Mary walked in. So her friend was the one who needed the answers from my dad. So Mary just tagged along. And I was like, hey, I just got my new dirt bike. Do you want to see it? She's like, yeah.
And I love, you gotta know, I love dirt bikes. I am the kind of woman that loves like crazy stuff like that. Like, so for me, here I was in my long skirt. And what did you say? You want to go for a ride?
Yeah. Like, do you want to go for a ride? And this is in Tanzania, there's no street lights. So it's like, it was already dark. She's like, yeah, sure. So
I'd
hop on my dirt bike,
hike my skirt up,
drove around the neighborhood in the dark, came back, and then I was like, hey, I just got my Land Cruiser back. Do you want to look at it? Do you want to go for a ride? She's like, sure. So we went for a drive.
Yeah.
And
so it was in that moment, in riding that dirt bike, holding on to your waist in that moment, all of a sudden something kind of started to click, something kind of started to change in my heart. But I was like, whoa, what is this? No, because at the time my roommate had always said, Mary Navarro, that was my maiden name. Do not, whatever you do not date Peter Street.
And for me, that night, came back in, and Mary and her housemate left, and my friend and I sat down. He's like, who is that? I was like, oh, it's Mary. We're really good friends. We hang out. And he's like, what about her? I was like, well, we're just friends and whatever. And he literally he smacks me over the head and says, you need to do something about that. And so that was kind of the wake up for me that night as well, a wake up call. I was like, oh, actually, yeah, this is worth pursuing.
And I had no idea.
Yeah. So I started going around more with my dirt bike. We'd go off on rides. Yeah. Go off up at the mountain with the dirt bike. That was a lot of fun. And it came down to a moment when Mary was painting a spare bedroom. So she's up on a ladder painting.
We were getting ready to host an internship where we had 7 different interns coming from around the US, from different parts of the US. And I say we, it was my housemate and my team at the time. We were getting ready to host this internship. And so I was painting, getting ready for these interns to come. Now, one of them, or a couple of them, had already arrived. And so we were all in this room. We were converting this garage area into this room to host the extra interns. And I was painting. So here I was, I got to set the picture. Here I was in this holy t-shirt, not holy as in hallelujah, but holy as in holy. and pretty tore up looking, no makeup, bandana on, and there I was painting up on a ladder.
So I had swung around and mustered up courage and waited till everyone left the room, and
Swung around.
yeah, it just happened to be in
Yeah.
the neighborhood. Yeah, waited till everyone left the room, and then I popped the question.
Not really.
Not really, not like that, but I was like,
but was like,
yeah,
hey,
hey,
would you be interested
interested
in
in,
dating me?
yeah.
And dating.
And so we both still remember this moment, but
Yeah.
she came halfway down the ladder, and
No, I come to the end of the ladder, but my foot was still up on a few
Yeah.
rungs and my other foot planted on the floor. And I can
Yeah.
remember, well, at first when you were talking to me and just telling me how you felt, I can remember being at the top of that ladder and painting the same place over and over and over again. And all these things are going through my head, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this moment's happening. What am I going to say? What am I going to do? I don't know. And then he's like, you remember what you
yeah.
said?
Well, are you going to say anything?
Are you going to say anything? And I'm thinking,
Just silence.
oh shoot, I've got to say something. And so anyway, I come down the ladder, slowly climbing down the ladder, paintbrush in hand still, bucket in the other hand, and come down the ladder. And my I had one foot, like I said, up on a few rungs, the other one planted on the floor at this point. Put the bucket down, put my hand on my waist. I still remember that, putting my hand on my waist.
Paintbrush.
And with the paintbrush.
Well, Peter Street.
You need to know who I am. And I just started telling him all this stuff, like who I am, how and what I'm called to, and what God has called me to, and what kind of family I lived in, and just all this stuff. And at the end of it, what did I say?
Yeah. So if you think you can handle that, then
A woman like me,
then maybe you have a chance.
You might have a chance. Yeah. And he was like, well, okay. Well, my family and I were getting ready to go to Mombasa for a family holiday, Mombasa, Kenya. And you said you would have your parents pray about it.
Yeah.
And you would pray about it. And then you asked me to pray about it.
Yeah.
And so we were all praying about it.
For a week.
And in that season of praying about it, as a single person, I was like, Lord, is this what you want? So there was so much fear wrapped around my heart when it came to dating and relationships. And if you want more of that story, get my book that's coming out soon. And I have a whole chapter on that. But there was a lot of fear around my heart when it came to dating and relationships, especially missing the wrong, missing the right one. Like, would I mess up the plan of God for my life? And so, when it came to Peter, I had always had words spoken over me about the type of guy that I was going to marry. And also people would often just say, hey, I see you with like the evangelist type that can preach to the masses and do all these things. And, and for me, that's exactly what I thought that I needed. I had a whole list of stuff that I believe that I needed in a guy to fulfill my life, to fulfill my calling. And in reality, God wiped that away. We went through a series of things. Talk about our journey.
It was a journey for sure. It was a good journey.
Hard journey. It felt hard.
It was. But looking back, it was like I'm super grateful for it.
Yeah, it was like a whole. We ended up dating.
Yeah.
Right. We ended
up dating for several months. We were both. We're like, hey, we don't want to just mess around with dating.
Yeah.
Said let's get married. That's what we were working towards. It was still fast, and
we both felt like it wasn't like in that moment after he prayed with, you went away with your family and I prayed. There wasn't this aha moment of thus saith the Lord. Honestly, I didn't hear anything, and I didn't feel. It's not like I didn't feel peace. It's not like I didn't feel a hardship around it. And I said, well, let's explore this. Let's see what happens with this.
Yeah, and it was the same for me and my parents. It wasn't an audible yes. It was like a peace. It's like, okay, it wasn't a no. It's like, okay, let's. So
we jumped in.
We jumped in,
and we dated through the internship, which I was leading, and that wasn't easy, dating through the internship, and we ended up dating for several months, like you said, and then I broke up with you.
Yes, after I had just proposed the week before.
Yeah.
So
It was a series about 6 months into it, or
yeah.
a year in it.
No, it was about 6 months later.
When you proposed. Yeah.
We went to the States,
It
proposed.
was his first time in
First time in
America.
the States, meeting her family and staying with them, proposed. And then a few days later,
A few days later,
Mary broke it off.
I broke off
Still
the
had a week in the
engagement.
States.
He still had a week in the States with us. And so there were a lot of variables in that as to like why I broke up. There was things that I saw in him that I was not happy about. And I was like, I cannot handle this in a relationship, a lot of emotional growth that you needed.
Mhm.
And I needed emotional growth in the area of trusting God, fear around my heart, and also communication.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So with communication, I needed to work on having more open communication with what I was feeling. I actually wasn't that great at communicating. I really had to learn, and it's been a journey. It's been a journey for me.
Mm-hmm. And I had to learn how to control my emotions, and had a lot of growing to do. But long story short, I went back to Tanzania. Mary stayed in the States, and the plan had been that Mary would stay in the States, plan the wedding, and I would fly back again. But I flew back to Tanzania. I had carried on with work, and that became a 6-month period where I stayed in Tanzania and Mary stayed in the States, and that was very hard for both of us.
It was very hard.
To begin with, no communication.
Yeah.
But then we started communicating again, and in that 6-month season, through email, and I don't think we had text because it was Tanzania, but through email we got back together again.
Yes.
And then Mary would break it off again. I think that
and
happened.
Then get back together. It
a couple of
like
times, three
three
times
times
within that 6-month period.
Yeah.
So it was very hard, but it was a very growing season for both of us, because we no longer kind of had each other to like rely on, but we're forced to like
deal with our stuff. Yeah.
So many people have told us like, oh, your first year of marriage, it's, you both bring your baggage. But that doesn't have to be the case. That 6 months for us, we dealt with so much of our own baggage in that time. And because we still got to communicate, we were able to communicate with each other and clear up a lot of stuff as well.
Yeah. So at the end of that 6 months, God brought me back to Tanzania. And I knew I had to face Peter, but I didn't know for sure what that would be like. I knew that my heart's cry was Africa. Missions has always been, like I said, a huge part of me. And God wasn't done with me in Tanzania. And so I remember getting on that airplane, KLM, getting on the airplane and flying, and literally in that time being upgraded to first class. Like I remember walking on the plane and they were like, actually, Miss Navarro, you're over here. And I'm like, I think there's a mistake. My ticket says, regular economy. They were like, no, actually, you're in first class. So God totally set me up. He used that entire flight for me to journal, which it's not something I love doing, but I do it sometimes. And I journaled, and I just journaled my heart to Jesus. My heart was so broken in this season. God had been really just doing so much cleaning in me, and taking away a lot of fears, and making me go after a lot of lies, or helping me. I shouldn't say making me. He invited me into this process and was helping me go after lies around this, and fear around marriage. Because for me, I had been brought up with a lot of broken marriages around me, but I had spiritual parents, people that were like family to me still to this day, that had a good marriage, and they were a great representation, but it didn't take away the fear around my heart of choosing the right one or the wrong one. Literally when I would look at Beth and Bill, when I would look at them in their marriage, I saw how perfect in my eyes, in my young eyes, I was like, they have such a perfect marriage. Will I ever find somebody like that? And so that too added to that fear of missing God's perfect one. Mm-hmm. And so, so then I flew back to Tanzania, and I can remember you actually had my cell phone at the time. It was the little Nokias that you leave texts on. And so you gave that to my roommate. What did you put on that cell phone?
It's the startup page when you turn on the old Nokias, and it said, if you love something, let it go free.
If you love something very much, let it go free. If it doesn't return, it wasn't meant to be. But if it does, love it forever. And I'll never forget that phrase, because you had put that on the phone and you said, I've always been the one. You left me a note and you said, I've always been the one chasing you. I'm not going to chase you anymore.
Mm.
If you want to get in touch with me, you have my number, you know where I live. And you specify that you still love me.
Mm-hmm. And in that season as well, before we went to the States, we'd found a house and started renting it with the plan that
You were fixing
get
it up.
married and then move back into that house. So
Yeah.
when I came back to Tanzania, I moved into that house on my own. And when you moved back, the house you'd been staying in, you'd already packed up your boxes. And so another teammate had moved into your old room. And so you came back to that as well, which was very hard.
Yeah, I can remember that night being picked up from the airport and being, came to my room, saw my room that had my boxes to the ceiling. And literally, oh, that was hard. I remember seeing the boxes and just weeping, broke down crying and going, God, it wasn't supposed to be like this. It wasn't supposed to be like this. And that was really, really, really just a hard place for my heart, for my mind. And I found myself really longing to see you. But I wouldn't let myself for several weeks, because I really was in this space of praying, God, am I supposed to do this? Am I supposed to? And there was definitely turmoil in my heart, because I was torn, honestly, between two places. And so I was just like, Lord, should I do this? Is he the one? Do I pursue? Do I go after? And I knowing you had left that message, but in the end, I knew I had to see you, because my mother was coming to Tanzania, and my mother had met Peter. She loved him, and so did her friend that was coming with her. And she loved your family, and so I knew that we would have to see each other. And in that season, what happened? It was 3 weeks later.
Yeah. So you texted me, I think,
and we agreed to meet at the house that we had gotten together.
Yeah. So I'd been fixing it up for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And so Mary hadn't seen all the progress on it. And I remember I was waiting by the gate for you and saw you coming up the road, and then we walked in.
Mm-hmm. And the moment I stepped onto the property, I started crying.
Yeah.
It was a very emotional time. I literally started crying. He took my hand and he showed me around the entire property what he had done. And then he took me in the house and showed me the house and how he set it up. And I was a blubbering mess.
Mm-hmm. Sat on the green couch.
I wept and wept. We had this 2-seater green couch. He sat me down on the couch, and I just wept and wept and wept. And because there was this place of me where I knew how much I had broken his heart, but I also came to the realization how much I actually did still care about him and loved him. And I just began to weep and weep, and through snotty noses and all, he took out this piece of paper, and it was a song.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a song I grew up with, the old songs, but Father, I place into your hands the thing that I can't see. Father, I place into your hands the things that trouble me. And I carried on with that. I sang her that song. It has several verses, and
he sang me that song. And as he sang me that song, I cried even more. And in my own heart, I felt like I had kind of like I could imagine what Gomer felt like in the Bible when Hosea pursued her heart. And that's how I felt, because I had trampled on his heart. I had ran away so many times. Literally, I mean, I had a nickname, the Runaway Bride, and had trampled on his heart, ran away so many times. And I was so broken and hurt by my actions, but also so undone by his love. I'm gonna cry thinking about that. And I didn't expect to get this emotional talking about this, but it was a journey. Mm-hmm. And it was a beautiful journey. It was a beautiful journey. And we ended up on that trip going with my mom and her friend to Zanzibar.
Mm-hmm.
And on that trip to Zanzibar,
Proposed
for
again.
a second time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she said yes.
I said yes. And in that moment of proposing, I remember standing on the beach, seeing the vastness of the Indian Ocean as he was on his knees. And yeah, I said yes right away. He asked me to marry him. I said yes right away. But that song by Chris Tomlin, How Great Is Our God, kept going through my head. And in that moment, I knew that the Lord had brought us full circle.
Yeah.
He had brought us full circle. And of course I cried again. It was just this really beautiful moment, and I never looked back after that.
No.
But let's talk about going to singlehood. Like, what would you say to all the single guys out there that are just deeply wanting, like, to get married, but they have a fear? They have fear, like, even around dating. What would you say to them?
That's real. I think one of the biggest things, at least in that season, was I really sought the Lord. I know you did too. It was like, that's all I had. That was my anchor. So I sought him and went after him. But as far as before that time, like when my friend smacked me on the head, it has to start with friendship. You gotta like have a foundation of that, like pursue friendship, spend time together with their friends, with them. It doesn't have to be this high stakes moment. But then as a guy as well, like it's our responsibility to step up and pursue and do something about it. Sometimes that needs a friend to smack us on the head and say, hey, you need to pursue that girl, that you know, do something about it. But then we need to do that. And just because you get rejected or things don't turn out the way you hoped, it doesn't mean you give up, but you go back to the Lord with it.
Yeah.
And pursuit doesn't mean once the door is shut, then it's all over. A door can be opened.
And it can close for a season.
Close for a season. And you, with all of it, this is what my dad taught me. Keep it with an open hand.
Yeah.
You know, even if you believe, hey, this is the one, whatever, keep it with an open hand, because we can't hold on to things too tightly. If the Lord wants to open a door for you, he'll open a door. And if he wants to close it, he'll close the door. So we have to walk in partnership with him and be like, Lord, this is what I'm stepping into. If you don't want it for me, close the door and make it clear. But I'm going to knock on this door and step through it.
Yeah. What would you say to people in general, single people that really believe that there's only one out there? It can be a tough one sometimes.
Yeah, I think, in a sense,
God can do anything.
He can do anything. And in a sense, it's like, who are we to say that is the one or that is not the one? It's like, if you feel like this could be the one, then we have to step towards it and pursue it and believe that, hey, this could be the one.
Yeah.
But we're not to say, oh, but it doesn't fit this, or it's not perfect, it can't be the one.
Right. So in my case, I told you that I had this list, and there was another guy who fit those parameters of the list, but in the end I knew that he wasn't the one. And Peter did not fall in all the categories on that list. He was this shorts wearing, kind of holes in his shorts sometimes, holes in his t-shirt sometimes, white African boy who would walk through the jungle barefoot, which actually sometimes I thought that was a little sexy. And that was actually one of the things, like, I was like, who is this rugged man? But he was this guy who would like flip-flops all the time, hated dressing up, hated any of those things. And you didn't really fit that list. But God told me, tear the list up. He said, Mary, I know your heart better than you know it. He said, don't you think I know your heart better than you know it? And when he told me that, I tore the list up. Now, if God's called you to make a list, make the list if you know that he's in that list. But sometimes those lists are just for us to get things out of our heart, and then you let him do the rest. I think that we box ourselves in when we stick so hard to those lists that we don't have eyes to see what God puts around us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, when it comes to like, oh, but this is the call that God has on my life, and this is where I see myself going, because God knows our hearts so well, so much better than we do. That was when he spoke to you. You're a powerful preacher and powerful speaker and a powerful woman. And in past relationships, that had always been a point of like competition,
Right.
or
Yeah.
with
Different guys that I had
different
dated.
guys.
Yeah.
And the Lord spoke to you that, in that 6 months, and he says, no, Peter is a rock.
Hmm.
He's steady.
Hmm.
And that's what you need.
That's what I needed.
And
And that is so what you've been for me. You've been an anchor. Jesus is my number one, but you've been that anchor to me. You've been the anchor to our house, to our household, our family, our children.
yeah, and in that, I'll get up and preach if I have to, but if Mary can get up and preach, I'm all for it.
And you've been
And
so supportive in
I'll
that.
support her and empower her, and that works. And the Lord knew what she needed. It hasn't held her back, I don't think,
No,
one little bit. You've
no,
probably even been more empowered
definitely.
to do whatever the Lord
Definitely,
calls you to do.
because there's no jealousy on your end towards the callings on my life.
Mhm.
And we actually, what you carry and what I carry complement each other,
Mhm.
I believe, so well. And we also found that between us, we're a very powerful couple.
We make a really good
We
team.
make an incredible team because our strengths, we're such visionaries, we're builders, we're pioneers.
Yeah. And where Mary has a weak area or I have a weak area, we have strong areas that then compensate that. And together we're super strong.
Yeah. And so for me, I would say to the single women out there, don't wait. Don't rely only on your list, but go after what the Lord has put on your heart. Don't hold yourself back. Don't hold yourself back from what you desire to do. I mean, I was talking to a single girl yesterday who owns her second home. She's not married, but she didn't wait. And I love it when I talk to, our daughter Hope, our oldest daughter. She's like, I want to buy a house when I'm young. She wants to build a wealth portfolio with real estate, just all these different things. And she has this desire to go after things. And I'm always telling my kids, as well as other young people, spread your wings and fly. Don't wait for something to happen to you. Don't wait for a spouse to happen to you, especially.
Yeah. And I think as well, it's super important not to partner with fear.
Yeah.
We partner with Holy Spirit. Nobody that comes into your life or any meeting or connection we have is by mistake. Holy Spirit designs everything. And so you can stop everything and partner with fear, or you can be like, okay, Holy Spirit, this, if it's a girl, this guy came up to me and asked me to go on a date. Don't partner with fear of what might happen to your heart. Don't partner with fear on trying to protect his heart, because it's so easy for us to get in the way of what Holy Spirit wants to do. And in dating and stepping out of fear into trust, it just dating someone isn't final.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're going to marry them. It's getting to know someone, getting to know their friends, getting to know them as a friend. It needs to stay low stakes like that. Like, who are they? What makes them laugh?
Yeah.
How do we have
Yeah.
fun together? Not like, oh, we're dating now, and
I mean, those are things even in marriage that you have to constantly, go after as well. Like, what makes each other happy?
Yeah.
Like you learn those things throughout marriage, and then you have to keep those things at the forefront of your marriage.
Continue
Otherwise,
pursuing.
yeah, continuous pursuit.
And if you don't have that foundation of friendship, you have nothing really,
Yeah.
other than Jesus, but you have nothing to fall back on when, you have kids and you're both tired or you're working, whatever. You hardly get any time to see each other, but it's like, oh, at the end of the day, we're best friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
And life has seasons like that, but you've always got that to fall back on.
Yeah.
And that has to be, when any dating you do, that has to be, I'm in this to find a best friend, not I'm in this for higher stakes. Obviously, you've got to think about the future too, but it's like, keep it low stakes, and like, I want a best friend to spend the rest of my life with.
Yeah. And so, like, I know we've talked about it when it comes to our kids growing and moving out of the home. That's not something we fear. I know a lot of older couples, or even couples our age, think about those things. I've talked to different ones, and that's like and of course we're going to be sad when our children move out of our home. We're going to be sad, but we're super excited for them too, to reach their full potential. But we talk about, like, we're going to be one of those old couples that hold hands on the porch and get to rock and talk about life, and but not just being on the porch. We're adventurous, and so we'll still do life and do things. I mean, like, we're adventurous people, and so we love to do stuff together.
And not just vacation and sitting on the porch. It's like, what's the Lord called us to? Where can we go? What
are we
nation
building?
can go and impact?
And what are we building in this season? What is God on? What is he breathing on? And so we're always going after those things, and doing life with each other, and doing life with the Holy Spirit. So we're going to land this plane soon, but I want to give to the single people out there 3 key points, and also to the married people. Let's do this. Like, let's give keys, like takeaways for you out there. What would you say are 3 key things that you want to release to the single people that are out there?
I think the biggest one is don't partner with fear and take risks.
Don't partner with fear, take risks. What's something else? I would throw in there, the number 1 should be keep God at your center. Like, let God lead, let love lead. He is your greatest Valentine. He is your greatest Valentine. I have met single people that get depressed at Valentine's. I think, to be honest, there's some realness to that, because you don't have someone in your life, but in reality, God should be your greatest Valentine. And I actually never went through that as a single person, because God really was my greatest Valentine. And you know what? I would be like, hey, let's go out with different friends and different people, and would make fun, have a fun time of it. And so I would say, keep God at your center. Yes, don't let fear rule your life, and take risks. Be willing to take risks. Don't be afraid of rejection, because maybe somebody will say no, but don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of it. And then I'm going to add a 4th one in there. Spread your wings and fly. Be about the Father's business, and don't wait for somebody to fulfill your heart, or to fulfill your call, because only God could be the one to do that. So when it comes to marriage now, what would you say the number 1 key takeaway is for marriage?
Keep the pursuit. Keep pursuing.
Keep pursuing. And then again, let God is love. God is love. Let him lead in your marriage. He's got to be your anchor. He's got to be your number 1. There's going to be times in marriage where you don't feel like, you wake up and you go, I don't think I love this person.
Hey.
There's going to be, we both have done that at different times, but in your heart, you do love them. But then you're like, in the moment, you're like, I don't really like you. And we have those times in marriage. But your biggest thing is, when God is your anchor, you go back to the truth. Yes, God, you brought us together. I know that he is for me, and that I am for you. You know that I'm for you. And so when we know that about each other, whether we're mad, whether we're through a super hard, rocky season, and we've had plenty of those, whether you're in that space, that you're for each other, and that God is your anchor. You can get through anything. And the biggest thing too is, like you said, continue pursuing one another, loving one another in the highs and in the lows, on the mountaintops and in the valleys, keeping love as your number 1.
Right. And I think another key for both, actually, for married and singles, is communication.
Yes,
you have to have healthy, open communication, which can be uncomfortable. It's the whole brave communication, but you have to do that. If you communicate, that unlocks things in both your hearts, and keeps the slate clean. There's nothing hidden. You've got to communicate.
So important. Communication is so important. And you know what? With God, all things are possible. God can bring that one into your life if you're single, and he can highlight people to you. He's so good at that. And he loves you. He's for you. He desires, if that desire for marriage is in your heart, there's going to be someone that comes along, and I believe will be released to you in the right season. And when it comes to marriage, if you're struggling, go to the Father. Go to the Father and let love lead.
Mhm.
Guys, it's been so great being with you and fun.
Yeah, thank you. It's been fun telling you about our journey.
Yeah. So we want to say to you guys, happy Valentine's
Valentine's.
week. Super exciting to be in this season. Go after love. Let love lead.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this podcast, hit subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends and family. Always remember, your voice matters. Your dreams are worth pursuing. And you, my friend, have the power to roar out loud.